You guys, I actually got off of the live stream early because that was the most brutal fourth quarter of basketball I think I've ever watched in my life. Oh my gosh. That fourth quarter lasted like 45 minutes. Luckily, the Fever were up by 10 points for most of the fourth quarter, but the referee was so whistle happy today. And they got whistle happy at the end of the game when it really...
The refs completely lost control and became whistle happy by the end of this matchup. And honestly, when you see a professional commentator literally checking out of a live broadcast before the final buzzer even sounds, you know something has gone seriously wrong with the flow of the game. And here's the thing, they didn't bail early just because the score was lopsided or the action was dull, but because that entire final period turned into something that was borderline unwatchable for anyone trying to enjoy competitive basketball.
Telling you guys in the live stream, I was like, this is basically defense versus defense. This is defense versus defense. This is swamp water basketball. This is murky basketball. This is mucked up gameplay basketball. There were so many players like running into one another, like everything was just mucked up. The offense was not flowing for either one of.
For the official record books, the Indiana Fever managed to come away with the win, taking down the Atlanta Dream with a final tally of 83-71. But let me tell you, those last few minutes stretched out like they lasted an hour, feeling like they would never actually end.
Live stream. Like if you think back to the Indiana Fever in 2024, I think a lot of us fell in love with that style of play because they actually didn't play defense like that. And I'm not saying that I want the Fever or any teams to not play defense, but I think that 2024 team was so offensive minded. They had to make up for everything that they were lacking on the defensive end by playing offense really fast, moving the ball around, playing really unselfish. And we saw that in 2024. Like they didn't have the best lineup, but it was such an exciting and fun brand of basketball to watch. And we saw spurts of that again in the third quarter when they started getting going and when they
The primary culprit behind that agonizingly sluggish finish was the officiating crew, stationed at the scorer's table, whistle-ready, completely disrupting and controlling every single aspect of the game's natural rhythm. Neither squad could get anything going offensively when this contest first tipped off.
Rebounds, Alicia Gray with 13, Jordan Canada with 13 as well, but she actually fouled out of this game. I do think that some of the fouls that they called on Jordan Canada were crap fouls. Like the refs got...
We're looking at absolute mud basketball here, a slow, grinding, completely defense-dominated brand of play. That's precisely the tone this entire encounter set right from the opening possession. Just to paint a picture of how brutally rough it got, the Atlanta Dream managed to scrape together only 29 points through the entire first half. You literally watched players colliding with one another, bumping bodies all over the hardwood.
And so I don't know what the fix is there, but for the last 3 minutes of this game to last for like 30 minutes, I may be exaggerating a little bit, but to last for a really freaking long time should not happen. And it was happening because they were blowing the whistle on every single little thing. We are definitely seeing more of this as well. We're seeing the flopping and flailing, like we're seeing the head throws, we're seeing the flopping. And I definitely don't want that to be implemented more into the WNBA, but we are noticing that. And again, we're not just noticing that on Atlanta, we are seeing it from Fever players as well. So it's something where you can see the players starting to want to manipulate the referees, but overall that is something that just ruins the pace of the game.
There was absolutely zero flow, zero offensive rhythm happening on either side of the ball. And what makes that even more frustrating is that this was supposed to be a highly anticipated clash that typically carries all that massive Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese star power and hype. Instead, this started out as arguably some of the most genuinely painful offense you're going to witness throughout the entire season.
But I felt like they were way too whistle happy. Now, one player on the Atlanta Dream who actually impressed me was Adina Okot. I thought she did great. So she played 9 minutes. She had 7 points. She was going to work on Aaliyah Boston. She was going to work on Michaela Timpson, and she looked really good out there. She played very minimal minutes, but I think she's somebody who can really develop and become a great player in the WNBA. I also think it's interesting because Adina Okot is a player that the Indiana Fever could have picked up in the draft, but they didn't. They passed on her and they got Raven. Now, Raven did really well tonight as well, and you can slowly see Raven's minutes.
Let's be completely real here. The 2024 Indiana Fever roster was absolutely not constructed or designed around their defensive capabilities. They were specifically assembled to push tempo relentlessly, showcasing beautiful ball movement and running an incredibly unselfish, free-flowing offensive system.
for a second. They were definitely running different things tonight. Like they were actually running a lot of trapping, which we haven't seen so much of. And it was effective. It was pretty effective. They were trapping the corner, they were trapping the wings, and the Atlanta Dream, they kept getting players stuck in the corner, and then the Fever would go trap them and they were able to get the ball out of their hands. And I think they did a really good job there. There was less of the kind of everybody's on their own island. There's no help here, just like good luck. You're playing 1v1 on defense, like good luck.
That high-octane, fast-paced brand of basketball is precisely what drew so many brand-new fans to this franchise and got them invested in the first place. We actually started seeing glimpses of that gorgeous offensive style return during the middle stretch of the third quarter. And as you probably could have predicted, it all began with Caitlin Clark aggressively attacking and pushing the pace up the court. You can watch it happen clear as day on the tape. This squad is just dramatically more effective and vastly more dangerous when they're running hard in transition compared to when they get stuck and bogged down in half-court sets.
This game, I started thinking, I was like, I feel like every single time that Caitlin and Angel have played against one another, there's been so much hype around the game. Is it just me, or did it feel like there was zero hype around this game? I feel like there was zero hype around this game, and there was also only slivers of passionate moments in this game. I don't know how much I like that, honestly. Like I kind of liked when these teams were playing against each other with a little bit of an edge and it kind of meant something to them. Like there was only moments here and there where I felt like these teams were like, oh, I hate you. I kind of want to go back to that. I kind of want to go back to teams hating one another, and we get these good rivalries and we get these good storylines.
Whenever they're forced to slow things down and grind it out, those double stagger screen sets they attempt to execute just wind up looking incredibly awkward, forced, and frankly, completely disorganized. If you genuinely want to understand what went wrong out there tonight, all you need to do is glance at Atlanta's final box score, and the underlying issue becomes incredibly clear.
Also, you guys, Kelsey Mitchell had a huge night. She ended the night with 25 points. She had 2 assists and 2 steals as well. And Kelsey Mitchell actually hit 5,000 points, which is crazy. 5K for KM. She hit 5,000 points tonight, and she really stepped up when things were getting stagnant. And this was also a point when Caitlin Clark wasn't on the floor. Kelsey stepped up and she got hot for a spurt of like 7 to 9 points, and she really got going. And so that was really cool to see. It's also really cool to see that she hit 5,000 points. And again, also Aaliyah Boston, the third member of this big three on the Indiana Fever, she had 19 points. She had 7 rebounds, 2 assists. She did have 4 turnovers, and she had 5 fouls. She has to be careful with that.
Nas Hillman finished her night with 12 points. Angel Reese posted a double-double performance with 11 points and 10 rebounds. Alyssa Gray contributed 13 points, and Jordan Canada also added 13 before she ultimately fouled out of the contest. And look, let's just say what everyone's thinking. Some of those late-game whistles called on Canada were absolute trash calls that had no business being made. But here's the more important point to understand. This incredibly low-scoring slugfest wasn't actually the direct result of the Fever's elite defense locking down and forcing terrible shots.
But again, you guys, I felt like the refs were really whistle happy. I don't actually think the refs were biased in this game at all. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, if those 3 get going in every single game, they should be a good team. Like there should be no reason why the Fever is not a good team. They have 3 first-team all WNBA players on their team, and you saw it in an instance like tonight. Even though this still wasn't the greatest game for the Fever, still wasn't the greatest game, but they are going to be hard to beat when you have 3 players who are scoring nearly 20 points in a game. You have Caitlin Clark close to a triple-double. Like when all 3 of them get going, they're going to be a scary team. They're going to be hard to beat. And I know there's been a lot of hysteria around the Fever in the past 2 weeks, and the coaching staff and the media and all of this. And I saw the Scott Agnes thing, and I do want to address it in a separate video. I just wanted to talk about this, but I'm definitely trying to.
No, Atlanta was literally out there launching the basketball completely off the backboard. They were airballing wide open shots and missing the rim entirely. We're talking about genuinely good, highly skilled professional athletes having a seriously off night shooting the basketball, not a team being systematically dismantled by some revolutionary defensive game plan. And this exact situation brings us to the massive underlying tension that the entire WNBA desperately has to address and reckon with right now. Think about it from this perspective. For 2 full seasons running, fans practically begged and pleaded that the referees step in and clean up the excessive physicality. People wanted officials to protect the star players and prevent these basketball games from devolving into literal wrestling matches happening in the paint. Well, it looks like the fans finally got exactly what they wished for. But the genuine problem now is that the pendulum has completely swung way too far in the absolute opposite direction, leaving us with a frustrating and hard-to-watch product on the floor. The officiating right now is completely and utterly whistle-happy, and what makes it even worse is that it remains incredibly inconsistent and unpredictable from one quarter to the next. But here's where things get really problematic and concerning. The players are absolutely catching on to exactly how the game is being officiated. You're starting to witness this massive uptick in flopping, flailing around wildly, and players dramatically snapping their heads back on drives, just desperately trying to bait the refs into blowing the whistle. It's turning into a theatrical performance and acting showcase out there. And let's be completely fair and objective about this whole situation, because it's definitely not just the Atlanta Dream players doing it. The Indiana Fever players are out there pulling the exact same manipulative moves and doing it too, trying to game a totally broken and flawed system. And you can slowly see hidden beneath the surface and buried deep in the rotation decisions of this game. There were 2 genuinely fascinating rookie storylines that are absolutely worth tracking and following moving forward. Putting that infectious Maddie Siegrist-type energy aside for a second, the real standout was the Atlanta rookie who only logged just 9 minutes of playing time, but still managed to score 7 highly impactful points. What's even more impressive about her performance is how she went right directly at Aliyah Boston and Michaela Onyen were in the paint without ever backing down for a single second. And here's an incredibly interesting detail about that particular player. She was actually a prospect the Fever totally could have drafted earlier, but they chose to pass on her instead. Instead, Indiana selected Raven Johnson, whose minutes just keep steadily climbing up game by game as she consistently draws the absolute toughest defensive assignments on the floor. Honestly, both of these young players look like very real, highly solid building blocks for a second unit moving into the future. Now, let's talk about the X's and O's and strategic adjustments for a minute, because the Fever actually came out and ran aggressive trapping schemes tonight, something we just really haven't seen from them all season long up to this point. They were actively trapping defenders in the corners, they trapped out on the wings, and they repeatedly managed to pin dream ball handlers aggressively against the sideline before swarming the play and knocking the ball loose for turnovers. Let me tell you that right there is a very real, very massive schematic shift away from that terrible, everyone is just on their own island. Good luck with your one-on-one defense mentality. That passive, hands-off style of defense is exactly what has completely plagued and hurt this group for months. But tonight, the defensive rotations were noticeably sharper, significantly faster, and just all around much more cohesive as a unit. And what's arguably the most encouraging takeaway from all of this schematic shifting and strategic evolution is that the defensive help was actually finally present and visible in this game. When a teammate got beaten off the dribble, someone else was right there rotating over to provide help defense. But despite all of that positive momentum and encouraging signs, there was just something undeniably missing from this matchup, and it's something way bigger and more significant than what you'll find in this one specific box score. Think about it objectively. Literally every single previous Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese meeting carried this enormous blockbuster, world-stopping hype and build-up. Yet for some bizarre and unexplainable reason, this specific game had almost absolutely none of that palpable energy. There was no big online build-up or social media buzz, barely any marketing or promotional push leading into tip-off, and we only saw tiny slivers of genuine, intense passion and competitiveness out there on the floor. Compare that complete lack of fire to someone like Victor Wembanyama over in the NBA, openly talking in interviews about how much he hates opposing teams and just how much massive juice and excitement that instantly creates for the fans and media. The WNBA regular season is short enough that these teams can completely afford to play every single game with an absolute edge, with real fight and intensity, treating it like it actually means something deeply personal and important. These big rivalries and underlying storylines are incredibly good for the league's overall growth and fan engagement, and watching these two hyped-up teams just lazily coast through long stretches tonight honestly felt like a massive missed opportunity for everyone involved. Now, she definitely has to be careful and disciplined out there, avoiding unnecessary fouls, but then there was this absolutely massive career milestone achievement that almost nobody was hyping up or promoting going into the arena tonight. Kelsey Mitchell absolutely poured it on offensively, dropping an incredibly efficient 25 points, filling up the stat sheet with 2 assists and 2 steals and officially crossing the legendary 5,000 career points threshold on the night. And the absolute best part of her performance is that she stepped up exactly when the team needed her the most, desperately. When the offense went completely stagnant and lifeless, and Clark was taking a breather off the floor resting, Mitchell ripped off this massive personal 7 to 9 point scoring run completely by herself, just to steady the ship and keep the Fever in control. Aliyah Boston also did some incredibly heavy lifting down low in the paint, adding a very solid 19 points and ripping down 7 big rebounds, although she did finish with 4 turnovers and 5 fouls, which are definitely numbers she's going to have to clean up moving forward, if this team wants to be taken as a serious playoff threat. I really just wanted to take a moment to talk about this specific point because I'm definitely trying to emphasize that this is the exact part of the breakdown that should entirely reframe how you watch the rest of this Fever season unfold. Think about the raw talent and star power here. Indiana literally has 3 first-team all-WNBA caliber players on this roster in Aliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark. When all 3 of those absolute superstars get going at the exact same time, with Clark casually flirting with a triple-double on any given night, there is absolutely no real reason this team isn't considered incredibly dangerous and a legitimate threat to anyone they face. Look, tonight wasn't even close to a perfectly clean or flawless performance, and yet they still completely controlled the pace and outcome of it. So let's take a deep breath and actually talk about the wild hysteria and overreaction surrounding this team, because frankly, it has gotten completely out of hand and unreasonable. Yes, they dropped 2 games recently that they absolutely probably should have won, based on talent and matchups. But let me be very clear and direct. That is not a total crisis or catastrophic situation. Look at the history of the league and previous championship teams. Just last season, the Las Vegas Aces looked downright terrible and disjointed early on in the year, and they still ended up winning the championship title convincingly. The super team New York Liberty heavily struggled straight out of the gate this year, and there is just absolutely no chance they are going to stay down and struggling all season either. The WNBA calendar and schedule is relatively short compared to other leagues. Yes, but the Fever are only about a quarter of the exact way through it at this point. This whole toxic, everything is crashing and burning narrative, swirling around the coaching staff and feeding the massive media frenzy, simply does not match the actual reality of what's happening on the ground. Here is the absolute core reality, and the biggest thing that every single fan just has to fundamentally accept and understand right now. This team is simply not going to go out there and win every single game on the schedule. It's just not going to happen in this league with this level of competition. They are going to lose some really frustrating games that they absolutely should win on paper based on talent and matchups. And on the flip side, they are going to surprise everyone and completely steal some massive games from top-tier opponents when nobody expects it. Sometimes they'll even pull off miraculous victories where they honestly had absolutely no business winning while playing completely badly and making mistakes. That is exactly what a long, grueling season looks like. That is just professional basketball at its core and fundamental level. Now, the whole dramatic Christie Sides coaching situation absolutely deserves its own dedicated breakdown and analysis on another day, but the wild emotional whiplash currently surrounding this entire franchise is clearly being driven by totally unrealistic outside expectations from fans and media, not by what is actually happening on the basketball floor in real games. If you take a step back and really look at it objectively, the real takeaways from tonight's performance are crystal clear and straightforward. First, the Fever finally found their true identity and rhythm for at least one full quarter, and it was that incredibly fast, unselfish, transition-heavy version of basketball that made so many people fall completely in love with them back at the start of 2024. Second, they unveiled an aggressive, trapping defensive scheme and strategy that actually legitimately worked and created turnovers. Third, Kelsey Mitchell hit an unbelievable 5,000 career points milestone and totally carried the entire squad when it mattered, the absolute most. However, on the negative side of things, the officiating definitely remains the league's most incredibly frustrating, unsolved problem that needs addressing. The theatrical flopping and embellishment is unfortunately starting to really creep in on both sides of the ball and become more prevalent. And the marquee rivalry matchup that usually guarantees this league sells out arenas completely lost almost all of its signature heat and intensity. So here is my big question for you guys watching right now. Do you genuinely want the WNBA to aggressively lean back into the feisty, edgy, every single game means absolutely something rivalries that made these specific matchups completely must-watch television and entertainment? Or on the other hand, Are you totally fine with the league completely cleaning up the raw physicality of the sport? Even if it directly means we have to suffer through whistle-happy officiating and incredibly slow games where players are just coasting and not playing with passion, because the truth is, you really can't have it both ways in this league and get the best of both worlds. I want to hear from you. Drop your hottest take down in the comments section below right now. And hey, make sure you hit that thumbs up button if this post-game breakdown and analysis was actually worth your time and delivered value, and definitely hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are going to be here covering absolutely every single Indiana Fever game this season with detailed breakdowns. And trust me, there is a massive New York Liberty matchup upcoming on the schedule that should finally give us all the explosive pace, beautiful offensive flow, and high-level basketball that this particular game was so desperately missing.